All right. As soon as we get here to 9 o'clock, which is looks like right now. All right. Good morning. Thanks for tuning in to Local News Live. This is a service of AOC Community Media. We do this for the visually impaired and also those who don't have access to the Acadiana Advocate. We read articles of local and state news, and all read by volunteers, which many times includes today's reader, who is one of our longest running readers, Bruce Cohen. Thank you for joining us from your home today, Bruce, to help read the news this morning. Oh, all right.
Always at the helm of the technology aspect of our being able to read the news every morning. Good morning, Acadiana. Today is Monday, August 31st. We're almost to Labor Day weekend, next weekend. I've got another week to go, but we're moving along through this very unusual year. 2020 will definitely go down in the history books as one of the weirdest years of all time, with the pandemic and everything else that's going on. The presidential election coming up. So again, let's get to today's highlights, news stories. Of course, a lot of these stories are reflected by the hurricane that came through parts of our area last week, and also other things that are going on in the city. And we'll start off with Lafayette won't open shelter. Email, bad actors, quote unquote, will abuse local hospitality by Megan Wyatt. Lafayette was spared the worst of Hurricane Laura, but the city's leadership doesn't plan to open an emergency shelter anytime soon for those in neighboring communities who have been displaced by the storm. Instead of hurricane damage, Lafayette has faced a serious local security threat of protesters, according to Lafayette Parish Mayor President Josh Guillory's administration. Cedra Weingirter, Guillory's chief administrative officer, sent a Saturday email to those involved in disaster response, urging them to take a pause on any action to establish shelters at this time. Jimmy Angel, Communications Director for Lafayette Consolidated Government, or LCG, confirmed the authenticity of the email, which has been making the rounds on social media this weekend. This is a serious threat, and we must handle this issue before we can care for our neighbors. It goes against what we believe and how we usually respond after a disaster, but it would be irresponsible to potentially put others in harm's way. Weingorder wrote Saturday to leadership of the Acadiana voluntary organizations active in disasters. We are not in a position to safeguard people displaced by Laura with a serious local security threat. We know that bad actors will take our hospitality and use it against us. Local pastors expressed concern over whether the threat of outside entities would present a problem at shelters at their facilities, Angel said during a Sunday call. The state's sheltering efforts will adequately take care of those displaced from the hurricane, Angel said, noting that every hotel in Lafayette Parish is booked. I don't think this will prevent anyone from getting shelter, Angel said. Will they have to maybe go a little farther? Unfortunately, that's probably the case. Protesters continue to be at odds with Guillory and his administration over response to the fatal police shooting of Trayford Pellerin. Pellerin, 31, was killed by Lafayette police officers on August 21st at a gas station along the Northwest Evangeline Thruway. State police investigators said Pellerin was armed with a knife and approaching the door of the convenience store when he was shot. Officers had trailed him for half a mile after responding to a disturbance call and deployed stun guns, which were ineffective, state police said. Protesters took to the street again Saturday outside the General Alfred Mouton Confederate Monument downtown and marched to the University of Louisiana Lafayette campus in support of racial equality and against police brutality. Meanwhile, a smaller group of protesters led by Tara Fogelman of Unity 7 grilled hot dogs and burgers on the road outside Guillory's home. Fogelman said the barbecue was an invitation for the mayor president to come outside and discuss Pellerin's death at the hands of police. In no way are we saying that Saturday's protest was dangerous or violent, Angel said. It was a lawful and peaceful protest, and we certainly hope it remains that way. Just given everything that's circulating, if you look at last weekend in the event that happened on the north side, our fear is that something will happen. Lafayette's elected officials and law enforcement leaders have repeatedly said protests are being influenced by those from outside the Acadiana area, but they have not disclosed specifics on how they've come to that conclusion. Public records show those arrested during protests have been from Lafayette and cities in the immediate vicinity, including Opelousas, Maurice, and Abbeville. Donations volunteers sought to help lower victims, staff report. United Way of Acadiana has partnered with Second Harvest Food Bank, Catholic Charities of Acadiana, and Rebuilding Together Acadiana for a joint food and supply drive in the wake of Hurricane Laura. The drive will run September 1 through 11th, bring supplies to 215 East Pinhook Road from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily. The United Way of Acadiana website suggests donating non-perishable food items, including canned tuna, dried or canned beans, canned chili or soup, peanut butter, nuts or trail mix, canned vegetables and fruits, fruit cups, tomato and spaghetti sauce, dried fruits, low sugar and high protein cereal, oatmeal, pasta, rice, grits, granola, bars, and other healthy snacks. Suggested supplies include unused mops and buckets, paper towels and toilet paper, personal hygiene items, soap and hand sanitizer, disposable personal protective equipment, paper plates and disposable cutlery, tarps, floor scrapers, pry bars, commercial trash bags, utility knives, and clotheslines and pins. Personal items sought for donation includes toiletries, school supplies, unused socks, unused underwear, feminine products, diaper sizes 2 through 6. Do not donate unlabeled cans, rusty cans, homemade food, glass containers, perishable food, open or used clothes items, or medicine. Volunteers are needed for supply distribution. Donors can send help directly to the United Way. See unitedwayofacadiana.org for how to contribute. At Catholic Charities, spokesman Ben Broussard lists the following ways people can help by donating. Monetary donations can be made through classy.org/disaster, or that's give-classy.org/disaster, or text relief, it's RELIEF, to 797979. Checks can be mailed to Catholic Charities of Acadiana, P.O. Box 3177, Lafayette, LA 70502. Disaster Amazon wish list in-kind donations to assist in disaster at amzn.to/34Z, capital U, MX, capital A. Disaster food drive Amazon wish list in There's another website for that as well at amzn.to/31 capital AW30 small p. Here's how people can volunteer. They can go to disaster volunteer website, which is bit.ly/C, disasters volunteers, or go to St. Joseph Diner volunteer page, Catholic Charities Acadiana.org/volunteer-calendar. Here's how people can file reports. If you need to report storm damage, you can do so at the Catholic Charities of Acadiana by texting disaster to 797979. Residents should also report damages to OSHEP. That's at bit.ly/31 WJE capital V capital 0, or large zero, however you want to say it. So you can also just go to the United Way of Acadiana's website, and hopefully all that information will be available to you as well if you wish to volunteer or make a donation. All right, moving on to Acadiana News. Let's see. Okay, we'll continue here. Restoring power will be long and difficult by Wills and Tell. Governor John Bel Edwards said Sunday that while gains are being made, restoring power to the Lake Charles area after Hurricane Laura is going to be a long and difficult process. Edwards told reporters that initial estimates of downed towers in the wake of the storm totaled about 170, including 70 large structures. That tally has since been increased to about 500 towers damaged or destroyed. That gives you some sense of the work that has to be done to get power back in Lake Charles, Edwards said. We have a long road ahead of us, he said later. The recovery is going to take a while and it's going to take a lot of effort. And a significant percentage of the state's population's lives are upside down this afternoon. Hurricane Laura slammed into Cameron Parish about 1 a.m. Thursday, a Category 4 storm and just below Category 5, and upended southwest Louisiana as well as parts of north and central Louisiana. The death toll is 14, including 8 who died from carbon monoxide linked to generators. The number of power outages statewide has been trimmed from more than 600,000 to 368,000 as of 3 p.m. yesterday, Sunday. More than 17,000 line workers are on the ground making repairs, the most ever, including more than 13,000 Entergy repair workers from 29 states. That is a big number of outages, Edwards noted. It's going to be a long and difficult process to restore the power. I know they're going to work as fast as they possibly can. I know this is difficult, Edwards added. We are asking for patience. Allow those crews to get where they need to go. Give them the space they need. This issue is complicated by the fact that dozens of water systems were also damaged by the storm. Some of those will come back to life when power is restored. But trees uprooted by the storm also damaged some water lines, meaning those repairs will need more time aside from the restoration of power. The governor said there are particular concerns about water systems in Lake Charles, Sulphur, and DeRidder. Edwards said that while he hopes to get an idea of how long it will take to restore power, when he meets the Entergy officials on Monday, residents should rely on their local utility and water system leaders for updates on repairs. The storm forced thousands of residents of southwest Louisiana to evacuate before and after the storm. Edwards said 8,962 people are sheltering in 45 hotels statewide, including 29 in New Orleans. Hotels are being used to avoid the typically crowded hurricane shelters used in the past to trim chances for the spread of the coronavirus, a worry made worse by the storm exodus. Another 5,875 people and possibly as many as 8,000 are sheltering in hotels in Texas. We do want to thank the state of Texas for being a good neighbor to our people while they are in need, Edwards said. Governor said the number of positive cases for the virus hit 1,645 since Friday, including 532 that date back to July. The death toll from COVID-19, the illness caused by the virus, rose by 27. A total of 6,241 members of the Louisiana National Guard are helping with hurricane recovery statewide. They have delivered 893,000 bottles of water, 473,000 meals, over 36,000 bags of ice, and about 14,000 tarps. Members of the National Guard are also delivering generators. All right, let's go to our first PSA for the morning. On the entertainment side of things, the Festival of Words is running a fundraiser entitled Words for You Zoom Performance. This will be held September 10th from 7 to 9:30 p.m. online at their Words for You Zoom Cafe. In this disconnected, crazy world right now, we invite everyone to create some magic with us being the Festival of Words. Festival of Words is getting to know you. On September 10th, the Festival of Words hosts a presentation of new original works by 45 authors. The event is a culmination of a fundraiser in which the public commissions writers to create personalized poems, stories, and songs. We are thrilled to have a diversity of authors, from poet laureates to beginners from Lafayette to Church Point to New York City. Come listen to these one-of-a-kind premiere performances on our online cafe. Grab a drink, snacks, and sit back for an evening of fun. Some of the presenters you'll hear that evening will be former poet laureates Jack Waddell and Darrell Bork, well-known journalist Dominique Cross, Charles Garrett, Toby Daspit, very involved in creative writing to the high school, junior high, and high school educators in the area, Cornelius Eady, Charles Claudel Garrett I, Valentine Pierce, Johnny Rose, very big in the Baton Rouge poetry market, Mona Lisa Saloy, Sandra Sarr, Tim Siebels, Tyler Robert Chilton, Margaret Simone, John and Warren Smith, our current poet laureate for the state of Louisiana, and many celebrated authors as well. You can go to the Facebook event page for Words for You. The link to the Zoom Cafe will be available the week of the event. Or you can contact Martha Gardner at festivalwordsmartha@gmail.com or 337-804-2482. Funds raised by Words for You contribute to the 13th annual Festival of Words. Festival of Words brings established authors from all over the world to Acadiana to give public readings, writing workshops in community centers and public schools during the first week of November. These funds will help ensure the continuing expansion and success of these programs. This year's festival will be held virtual and will feature graphic memorist Robin Ha, award-winning poet Erica Mittner, and Louisiana Poet Laureate John Warner Smith. The Acadiana Symphony Orchestra takes the virtual stage. The ASO, or the Acadiana Symphony Orchestra, announces that they are shifting the fall portion of the ASO 36 revival season to a virtual live stream platform. ASO believes that this is the unquestionable solution to keeping our community safe while providing opportunities for local musicians to share their passion and earn income despite mandated restrictions and uncertain venue viability. Acadiana Symphony Orchestra has and will always continue to provide outstanding performances to Acadiana and fueling the cultural economy of our region. Symphonies, businesses, and organizations across the country are having to rethink, retool, and re-event. We are no different. So thank you for your grace and your patience as we map out the next few months. We are working tirelessly behind the scenes to solidify plans for these virtual concerts, and it is our commitment to you that we will clearly and concisely communicate ASO 36 revival season details in the coming weeks. At a minimum, we are certain that you will receive the highest quality live streaming performances, which you can enjoy from virtually anywhere. As of right now, the lineup includes the program entitled Unite, which will be a virtual performance aired on Friday, September 11th, 2020, a couple of weeks. Triumph, Friday, October 23rd, 2020, virtual performance. Transform, Friday, November 13th, 2020, virtual. Believe, Thursday, December 17th, 2020, virtual. Adore, Friday, February 12th, 2021, virtual, but at the Acadian Center for the Arts, or ACA. Empower, Friday, April 16th, 2021, virtual, St. John's Cathedral. And Revive, Thursday, May 13th, 2021, virtual, St. Mary's Church. And the virtuals in those the last three may or may not be, depending on where we are with the pandemic at that point in time. AOC teams up with the United Way of Acadiana for Learn United. United Way of Acadiana has teamed up with AOC and other local educational groups for Learn United, bridging the digital gap to provide educational resources for households that don't have internet but do have a television. The Learn United program is weekdays from 8 to 2 on AOC 2, Cox 16, and LUS 4, and streaming at aocinc.org/watch. For the daily schedules and to submit content for this program, visit the United Way of Acadiana's website, unitedwayofacadiana.org/learn-united. Getting back into our news, crews making progress with restoring electricity. This is kind of a continuing news story to what I was reading earlier about restoring power. This article is written by Ken Stickney. Slumco, which serves 109,000 customers in 8 Acadiana parishes, was nearly done at noon Sunday with reconnecting those with outages to the electric power. We're hoping to finish today, said spokesperson Mary Laurent. We're providing power to anyone who can take power. At 4:45 p.m., she said 253 customers, most of them in Vermilion Parish, remain without power. Energy reported that 174,000 of 270,000 customers in Louisiana remained without power at 9 a.m. Sunday. Many of those were in Calcasieu Parish around Lake Charles. At midday Saturday, more than 200,000 customers were without power. CLECO reported Sunday morning that its crews continued to make progress and have restored power to more than half of the 140,000 customers after Hurricane Laura made landfall in southwest Louisiana on Thursday. At 8 a.m., power had been restored to over 74,000 customers. Only a handful of those were in Acadiana. Evangeline Parish had 1,174 customers without power, the most in Acadiana. The largest block of CLECO customers with outages, 30,311, was in Rapides Parish. Lafayette Utilities System, LUS, which provides power in Lafayette, had essentially completed connecting customers to power Saturday. It had released partners from Florida to either return to that state or serve customers elsewhere in Louisiana. A spokesman said LUS crews have gone to Vinton on Saturday to help there. All right. If you're in the air conditioning business, you may want to listen to this particular story. Air conditioning businesses see a parts shortage by Timothy Boone. Here's another industry being disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic: air conditioning sales and repair. Local air conditioning repair companies in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Lafayette said they are seeing a shortage of parts and equipment caused by manufacturing facilities in Mexico and China being shut down by the pandemic. At the same time, demand for air conditioning in other parts of the U.S. have gone up because people are spending more time at home and want to be comfortable. Daniel Bandy, owner of Air Serve for South Baton Rouge, said parts that used to take a day or two to get are now arriving in a week or 10 days. It's not one supplier that had a time frame change, it's all of them, he said. Tran, Lennox, Carrier have all had issues. AirServe has dealt with the delays as best it can. In some cases, it has used substitute parts until it can get an item from a specific manufacturer. In other cases, it has just given customers window units and told them to hang in there. For the most part, customers understand, Bandy said. They understand it is what it is. After all, people are happy to get their house cooled off, even if a part isn't quite right. Heather Mons, one of the owners of the Mons company, said some of the parts and equipment that are usually in stock everywhere are now taking a couple of weeks to get to her Baton Rouge air conditioning repair business. We keep a lot of stuff in stock, so in the worst cases, it's taken about a week, she said. Keith Adams, owner of Adams Air Conditioning Heating Services in New Orleans, said his company is trying to do the best it can to get parts and units, but the trucks aren't arriving. It's hard when you have a little old lady without air conditioning and you can't take care of them, he said, but we're trying to sort it out any way we can to take care of clients. Andre Mouton, operations manager with Lee's Air Conditioning in Lafayette, said he's seen a problem with getting air conditioning systems like the evaporator or the blower. The vendor that supplies Lee's has been forced to upgrade parts at no extra cost to accommodate customers who need a whole new cooling system. That's a loss for them, but a gain for the customer, Mouton said. The manufacturers who have reopened are still being affected by the pandemic, Mouton said. There are fewer employees working in warehouses because of social distancing. And if a warehouse employee tests positive for the coronavirus, companies are shutting down operations to control the spread of the disease. We're definitely seeing that it's hard to get equipment, he said. According to Heating, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Distributors International, the industry trade group for wholesale distributors in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning industry, 78% of members said they were having trouble getting equipment and systems this summer. Businesses are expecting more problems in the future based on the current situation and consumer demand. Seth Fidelia of Butcher Air Conditioning in Lafayette said thermostat and condenser manufacturers have been hit hard by pandemic-related shutdowns. Butcher has been lucky because they had a lot of inventory in stock, but Fidelia said he worries about serious problems in the winter. I really think we're going to run into problems in the future, he said. We'll see how it plays out, but I hope we can make it through the end of the year before we restock in early 2021. Hopefully the manufacturers will be open by then. All right, and let's go. It's almost a half-hour break, so let's go to our day in history and the zodiac, or the horoscope as I like to refer to it, and the funerals indicating on the area for today. Today is Monday, August 31st. It's the 244th day of 2020. There are potentially 122 shopping days left in the year. Today's highlight in history: on August 31st, 1997, Prince Charles brought Princess Diana home for the last time, escorting the body of his former wife to a Britain that was shocked, grief-stricken, and angered by her death in a Paris traffic accident earlier that day. Also on this date, in 1888, Mary Ann Nichols, believed to be the first victim of Jack the Ripper, was found slain in London's East End. In 1935, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed an act prohibiting the export of U.S. arms to belligerents. In 1969, boxer Rocky Marciano died in a light airplane crash in Iowa the day before his 46th birthday. 1972, at the Munich Summer Olympics, American swimmer Mark Spitz won his fourth and fifth gold medals in the 100-meter butterfly and 800-meter freestyle relay. Also at the Summer Olympics that year, Soviet gymnast Olga Korbut won gold medals in floor exercise and the balance beam. 1980, on this date, Poland's Solidarity labor movement was born with an agreement signed in Gdansk that ended a 17-day-old strike. 1986, 82 people were killed when an Aeromexico jetliner and a small private plane collided over Cerritos, California. 1989, Britain's Princess Anne and her husband, Captain Mark Phillips, announced they were separating after 15 years of marriage. 1992, white separatist Randy Weaver surrendered to authorities in Naples, Idaho, ending an 11-day siege by federal agents that had claimed the lives of Weaver's wife, son, and the deputy U.S. Marshal. Weaver was acquitted of murder and all other charges in connection with the confrontation. He was convicted of failing to appear for a trial on firearms charges and was sentenced to 18 months in prison, but given credit for 14 months he had already served. In 2005, New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin reported a significant number of dead bodies in the water following Hurricane Katrina. Nagin ordered virtually the entire police force to abandon search and rescue efforts and to instead stop increasingly hostile thieves. 10 years ago, President Barack Obama entered the U.S. combat mission in Iraq, declaring no victory after 7 years of bloodshed, and telling those divided over the war in his country and around the world, it is time to turn the page. 5 years ago, President Barack Obama, opening a 3-day visit to Alaska, painted a doomsday scenario for the Arctic and beyond if climate change wasn't dealt with quickly. Entire nations submerged underwater, cities abandoned, and refugees fleeing in droves as conflict broke out across the globe. 1 year ago, a gunman carried out a shooting rampage that stretched 10 miles between the Texas communities of Midland and Odessa, leaving 7 people dead before police killed the gunman outside a movie theater in Odessa. Today's birthdays. We're looking at rock musician Jerry Allison, who played with Buddy Holly and the Crickets, is 81 today. Actor Jack Thompson is 80. Violinist Isaac Perman is 75. Singer Van Morrison, one of my favorites, is 75. Actor Richard Gere is 71. Olympic gold medal track and field athlete Edwin Moses is 65. Rock singer Glenn Tilbrook from the group Squeeze is 63. Rock musician and Gina Shock from the Go-Go's fame is 63. Singer Tony DeFranco from the DeFranco family musical group is 61. Actor Jamie P. Gomez is 55. Actor Zach Ward is 50. Actor Chris Tucker is 48. And actor Sarah Ramirez is 45. And looking at the horoscope for today of the zodiac, if you're a Virgo like myself, you take a break from your schedule. The change will spark your imagination and encourage you to make lifestyle adjustments. Focus on what makes you happy. Libra, personal improvement is favored. Refuse to let anyone bully you into something you don't want to do. Call the shots and make your thoughts and needs known. Scorpios, stick to your plans regardless of the backlash you get from others. You are responsible for your happiness, so do whatever it takes to pursue your best interests. Romance is in the stars. Ta-da! Sagittarius, live and learn. Take on a physical challenge that will encourage you to get involved in something you find rewarding. If you learn from your mistakes, you will find a rewarding path. Capricorns, pay less attention to what's already happened and more attention to the best way to move forward. Concentrate on making home improvements, lowering your overhead, and saving money. Aquarius, refuse to let your emotions take the reins. Look at situations from a logical perspective. You can't change others, but you can improve your own circumstances. Pisces, lend a helping hand and you will make new connections. An unusual partnership will turn out to be helpful as well as entertaining. Love and romance are in the stars. A change of pace looms. Aries, take your time, dig deep, get the facts, and make decisions based on verified information, not what someone leads you to believe. Separate your business and personal lives. Taurus, stick to your plan regardless of what others do. Use your knowledge, experience, and skills to get ahead. A physical change will boost your morale and attract compliments. Gemini, look for the positive in every situation you face. You'll find a way to take care of your responsibilities and have time left to enjoy doing something that makes you happy. Cancer, you may not like change, but it's time to make adjustments that will encourage you to keep up with technology and economic trends. Don't fight the inevitable, go with the flow. And finally, Leo, keep moving forward. Looking back will cause confusion and uncertainty. Focus on what you can do and live in the moment. Refuse to let anyone compromise your health and well-being. And as always, the horoscope is an entertainment feature not based on scientific fact. Funerals today in the Kittyana area include Eve Bork at Delhome Funeral Home in Maurice at 2 p.m. Marie Dubuchet, St. Bridget Catholic Church in Littell at 11 a.m. Alita Landry, Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church at 11 a.m. Meredith Liu at St. Mary's Catholic Church in New Roads at noon. Charlotte McDermott, Martin and Castillo's Lafayette Chapel in Lafayette at 10 a.m. And George Fear at St. Mary Mother of the Church, 419 Doucet Road in Lafayette at 10:30 a.m. Getting back into the news cycle, or news stories, I should say. Happy Campers. Planned RV park and Broussard, part of growth in an industry that is exploding during pandemic, by Adam Daigle, a Acadiana business editor. Alfred Brustani's search for a recreational vehicle for his family for weeks went like this. Find a new listing, call, too late, already sold. Weeks went by until he found one at a Camping World store in Orlando, Florida. A new 23-foot Coleman Lantern pole behind camper. And he knew he had to move quickly, so quickly that he bought it first without letting his wife, Roa, know he had found what he had been searching for. 8 days later, it arrived in Lafayette. We had talked about it, said Bustani, who, along with his wife, have 2 young children, a third on the way. The way these things are moving, I knew I had to pull the trigger or I would never get one. I went home and told her I bought a camper. Demand for RVs in the era of COVID-19 have surged across the country. Many Americans are skipping hotels and air travel for RV parks in this era of social distancing. Some experts say the demand is so great that RV parks can't get built fast enough. Billiard Companies is hoping to help meet that need. Company reps and officials with the city of Broussard and the Broussard Chamber of Commerce broke ground on an RV park Wednesday that will feature 53 full-service sites that could be available to RVers by the end of the year. Parkside RV Park will be located just outside the entrance of the Broussard Sports Complex at St. Julien Park. Location is ideal for accommodating families attending events there. Gilead CEO Stephen Hebert said, along with a solid investment amid the growth in the RV industry. Post-virus has exploded like everything else, Hebert said. You can't find an RV, can't find a boat, can't find a bicycle. It's not only inexpensive, but it's also a way for you and your family to get away and not have to be around a bunch of people in the middle of the pandemic. Most of that surge in interest has come from millennials, Hebert noted, including those with young children. A report from the RV Industry Association, the number of younger first-time buyers continues to rise, while the data overall shows an increase in the industry. Wholesale shipments tracked by the industry in June were the highest in almost 2 years and a 10% bump over a year ago. Towable RVs totaled just under 30,500, up 13% from a year ago. That demand may not let up, according to a survey of prospective travelers in North American Camping Report, sponsored by the Campgrounds of America. It found that 46% wanted to camp as a way to spend time outdoors after staying home for so long during the pandemic. 41% see camping as an affordable way to travel. 37% find it easier among social distancing guidelines. The result has been a shortage in sites for today's RVers, which requires more space than at sites built decades ago, said Homer Staves, a Montana-based consultant who worked on the Broussard project. The industry has also seen the rise of luxury camping or glamping that has also become popular. Our industry is really segmented into 3 parts: manufacturers, dealers, and campgrounds, Dave said. Manufacturers and dealers are crying all the time that there's not enough campsite and that it hurts sales. There's pressure to build more campgrounds and expand existing campgrounds. Return on investments are usually pretty good for campgrounds. The Broussard campground, Hebert noted, will not be on the caliber of the Cajun Palms Resort campground in Henderson, but will feature modern amenities, including long-level full-service sites with high-speed Wi-Fi connections and a bathhouse with 5 family-style bathrooms. It will be similar to the RV park located near the Youngsville Sports Complex, which can cater to families visiting the complex. Ours is more of a destination park, Hebert said. A lot of our customers will be with their families at the sports complex. Hopefully it's going to help keep people attending the events in the Broussard economy instead of staying in Lafayette or elsewhere. Bustani said his family has already taken trips to Indian Creek Campground near Alexandria and last week to Palmetto Island State Park in Vermilion Parish. If you want a nice spot on the water, he advised, it's a safe bet to book the spot 2 months in advance. An RV park near Destin, Florida is booked through November. And if you're trying to buy an RV, that might be difficult as well. My parents are trying to get one, and we went to Primo RV, he said. A guy I went to high school with is selling them. It was to the point where he only had limited inventory to show us based on what my parents wanted. He had like 2 to show us. They're flying off the lot. Okay, before we go on to the next story, let me take a little sip of coffee here. Thank you for that coffee moment. Okay, let's see what else we got here. We have an article called Protecting the Herd. Although livestock is mostly safe, storm takes out ranchers' homes and farms by making way. Hurricane Laura's storm surge may have washed away 595 head of cattle into the Gulf of Mexico. Thankfully for Louisiana's cattle industry, that seems to be an isolated case because most ranchers managed to move their cattle to higher ground ahead of the storm. The only story that keeps coming back around are the 595 cows missing from the Holly Beach area, said Mary Woodridge, chair of the Louisiana Farm Bureau's Livestock Committee. There were 600, and they only found 5. There was no sign of the rest of them, but no dead ones either. They think they may have been swept back out to the Gulf. Even though most ranchers haven't lost their herds, they're still facing overwhelming devastation to their homes and farms. It wasn't a real loss of livestock because everyone was proactive, said rancher James Bozo Cox. But everyone's got cattle herded up in small areas right now. Cox 65 moved about 200 herd of cattle from his coastal Cameron Parish ranch to higher pastures in the northern part of the parish last week. His cattle made it through the storm just fine, but he's worried about getting them back to the property where the wind has torn apart his barns and fences. We've come back to nothing, Cox said. Our 50 by 100-foot hay barns are non-existent. We piled all of our equipment in there ahead of the storm. The hay is still salvageable, the equipment is still fine, but the barns are gone. That work has been secondary, however, because he's had a more urgent matter to deal with in the days following the hurricane, sheltering his family. Cox stayed in his sister's Lake Charles home without electricity or water in the days following the storm. All 4 of the homes on his farm's property where he and his extended family stay are too damaged to live in. Rita was bad, Cox said, but our house has made it through Rita. Likewise, rancher Willie Danos, who has about 300 head of cattle in Calcasieu and Jefferson Davis parishes, lost his home in the hurricane. Danos, 55, didn't evacuate his livestock ahead of the storm because their properties aren't prone to flooding, but he realizes now that he and his wife probably should have evacuated from their home. Instead, they tried to salvage what they could as the storm took out their roof. Farmers are resilient and will overcome the latest obstacle of threatening their livelihood, Daniel said. I've been through more than 100-year events than you can imagine between freezes and hurricanes and everything, Daniel said. I've been through a lot. This is just another little speed bump. I just don't go quite as fast anymore. It's still too soon to know the full impact Laura has had on the cattle ranchers in southwestern Louisiana. The greatest loss, cattle ranchers won't be just in the form of structural damage, Daniel said, but to the stress on their livestock. There was a drop in calf profits the year after Rita that Danos attributes to the stress cows went through months earlier during the storm. Just like the stress on me and my wife now, there's stress on these animals. It's a lot to go through to process, Danos said. There's just an enormous amount of stress because of the unknown. Some key air monitors offline after Laura hits Louisiana gas hub by Ellen Ninkmeyer, Associated Press. Hazardous emissions from a chlorine plant fire abruptly shuttered oil and gas refineries and still to be assessed plant damage are seeping into the air after Hurricane Laura, regulators say, with some key state and federal monitors to alert the public of air dangers remain offline in Louisiana. Excuse me, let me take another sip of coffee here. Thank you. Thank you for that coffee break. While the chlorine fire was being monitored as a potential health threat, Louisiana environmental spokesman Greg Langley says he knows of no other major industrial health risks from the storm in the state. He said restoring power and water was a bigger priority. But some Louisiana residents and environmental advocates say the lack of solid government information on the state of the air is typical. With dozens of petroleum, petrochemical, and other industrial sites, Louisiana is home to communities with some of the nation's highest cancer risks, according to the EPA or the Environmental Protection Agency rankings. In Lake Charles area, with refineries, a major natural gas project, and other industrial sites, residents generally don't get any information except what the industry puts out. Said Carla Grisco, a Lake Charles lawyer who evacuated the city before Laura. The area was among the hardest hit Thursday. Laura struck parts of the Texas-Louisiana coast with up to 150-mile-per-hour winds, and a storm surge of Louisiana Governor John Bel rose as high as 15 feet. An electrical outage that deprived hundreds of thousands of people of power in respect to last week's has knocked offline state's stationary air monitors in the storm-battered communities. Oil and gas facilities that U.S. Department agency says account for 13% of U.S. refinery capacity shut down as a precaution along an industrialized roughly 60-mile stretch from Port Arthur, Texas, to Lake Charles just before the hurricane. The abrupt shutdowns and eventual restarts for hurricanes typically mean the emission of up to millions of pounds of additional cancer-causing soot, heavy metals, and other hazards from refinery smokestacks. A fire at a plant making swimming pool chemicals in West Lake, part of the larger Lake Charles area since Thursday, has on a few occasions sent enough chlorine into the air to be detected by the emergency workers' handheld monitors, Langley said. Chlorine levels were not high enough to warrant evacuations, officials said, although residents of the industrial area around the plant were under orders to shelter inside their homes for days after Laura's landfall. With debris clogging roads, industry still is assessing damage along the Texas-Louisiana coast. No word of any major industrial threat other than the chlorine plant fire has emerged by 3 days after Laura. After Hurricane Harvey hit Houston in 2017, confirmation of more than 100 toxic spills into the air, land, and water took days, weeks, and months to become public, and many were never investigated. In a storm of this magnitude, there's going to be some leaks, there's going to be some spills, Langley said Saturday. We're still in the process of assessing that. I don't know of anything personally that's major. Texas has requested the EPA's help overall looking for any so far undiscovered hazardous air releases after the hurricane, but Louisiana, with the exception of the chlorine plant fire, has not, EPA spokesman James Hewitt said. EPA stands ready to assist states and local governments who need help and have already done so following Hurricane Laura, Hewitt said in an email. Texas made a formal request for air monitoring help through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, Hewitt said. As a result, EPA has sent a bus-mounted mobile lab to the Houston area to start monitoring and assessing air for any hazardous emission levels, he said. Information will be provided to the public as it becomes available, which follows our standard procedures, he said. A spokeswoman for the Louisiana governor did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Sunday. By Saturday, EPA contractors had left the area of the chlorine plant fire, said Langley, Louisiana environmental spokesman. An environmental consulting firm would continue to do all air monitoring, he said. State officials also will be flying over the damaged area to look for obvious leaks, sheens, wayward metal drums, and any other signs of industrial threats, Langley said. We have a lot of experience in the hurricane response looking for that, he said. Copious alerts reflect cautious approach. Forecasters issued 38 tornado warnings in 2 days, by David J. Mitchell. In September 2005, the potent storm band swirling around Hurricane Rita spawned 55 tornadoes in 36 hours in Jackson, Mississippi, and parts of northeastern Louisiana and southern Arkansas. At that time, it was a record for the region, the National Weather Service says. Weather experts say experiences like that one led them to be watchful for possible tornadoes when bruising hurricanes blast in from the Gulf of Mexico during the steamy days near summer's end. That caution, born out of a mission to save lives and property, can bring a flip side that was front and center for Hurricane Laura. Plenty of tornado warnings for the Baton Rouge area, but few twisters to speak of. Forecasters issued 35 tornado warnings on Wednesday and 3 on Thursday in the Louisiana parishes and Mississippi counties covered by the Weather Service Office for Baton Rouge and New Orleans. 2 tornadoes were spotted, one in Paincouville in Assumption Parish and another in the White Castle area in Iberville Parish, with no damage reported, Weather Service officials said. All those alerts sent cell phones pealing with tornado warnings and led some residents to shut off their phones, raising questions whether too many alerts can be counterproductive, though social science research after Hurricane Harvey in 2017 found frequent tornado warnings weren't a problem then. Benjamin Schultz, meteorologist in charge at the Weather Service office in Slidell, acknowledged it's possible that multiple tornado warnings could pose a downside risk to public attentiveness. But he said it would be worse not to issue an alert for weather conditions on the fence for a tornado and then have a life-threatening tornado develop. It's easy after the fact to say that they issued too many, Scott said. I can understand someone's take on that, but he says scientific basis exists for a heightened concern about tornadoes being spun off from hurricane storm bands. Though those tornadoes may not be the large twisters seen in the Midwest, they can still pack 80 to 100 mile-per-hour winds that can destroy a home, Schott said. There are still dangerous situations, and so even though they may be on the ground for 5 or 10 minutes, our job is the protection of life and property, and we're going to issue those warnings when we know the environment is conducive for tornadoes, Schott said. During major weather events like Hurricane Laura, the Weather Service assigns meteorologists to specific tasks and wanted to focus on finding the telltale signs of tornado formation and deciding whether to issue a warning, Schott said. While the computer algorithm alerts meteorologists about these signs, Schott said, they make the final call. They're looking for rotational winds the service's Doppler radar can detect in the few thousand feet of air. The hurricane band's rotation around the eye helps generate those winds. Unlike in spring storms that create huge supercells, this wind rotation in the hurricane bands can be small and, according to Schott, borderline and borderline undetectable. During those conditions, meteorologists are a little bit more proactive to issue the warning, he said. Some may call that alarmist. I would disagree and say that it's a better safe than sorry when the science shows in these events. If you start to see this little bit of rotation, the possibility of a tornado being there is there, Schott said. Jay Grimes, chief meteorologist with WAFB in Baton Rouge, said the bulk of these tornado warnings came during a 6-hour period Wednesday. He said his station and social media heard from people angered with the number of alerts. The question becomes, do we want to use technology to protect people the best way we can, even if it means arguably over-alerting them? Or I kind of lean in the yes column there. I'm not way far on the right side of yes, but I'm thinking, we need to be proactive in warning them, he said. Grimes added that even he stopped cutting into regular coverage to talk about new tornado warnings, letting crawling updates at the bottom of the television screen handle them, because it was becoming just one after another, he said. Kim Clarko-McLean, a lead behavioral research scientist with the Cooperative Institute for Mesoscale Meteorological Studies at the University of Oklahoma and NOAA's National Severe Storms Laboratory, said Hurricane Harvey in 2017 has generated a number of tornado warnings in Texas. A subsequent public opinion research effort that she was a part of found many people appreciated the heads up during Harvey. For the storm, local television was reported as a highly influential source for information, followed by websites, friends and families, and other resources. But many also received alerts known as wireless emergency alerts on their phones, Clark McLean said. For those who reported receiving WEAs, none reported turning them off. Some interviewees received numerous tornado warnings through WEA, she said. Though the warnings may not have led those people to seek shelter, they did report remaining vigilant because of them. The team found no evidence of a false alarm problem in areas with the most tornado warnings, Cloco McLean said. She added, however, differences exist between the Texas experience during Hurricane Harvey and the southeast Louisiana experience in Hurricane Laura. Harvey lingered longer over Texas than fast-moving Laura did and produced more tornadoes than Laura did. Tornadoes are also rarer in the Houston area. She said maybe people in the Houston area felt less comfortable tuning the warnings out. It's very possible that the people of southern Louisiana have different perspectives on what warming practices they prefer. It's also possible the characteristics of the event differed enough that people generally could feel that frequent warnings were more justified in one case and not another, Cox McLean said. Tornadoes spawned by hurricanes pose a complex communication task to explain to the public, she added. Tornadoes are hard to pinpoint and exist for a short time, even while the threat of them can continue for hours. They are also only one of several threats from a hurricane. While the tornado's brevity can make it harder for the public to perceive them as a personal threat, the extended risk of twisters in a hurricane can make issuing the warnings burdensome, Cox McLean said. We need to learn a lot more about what the public in different areas expect from the warning system when something as complex as a hurricane comes along, she said. Schott, the Weather Service chief of the Baton Rouge area, said his office will conduct a standard post-hurricane review and look at each of the warnings issued during Laura for possible lessons. Okay, it's now 9:57 by my clock, which means we're already past the cutoff for the audio portion of this morning's news reading at our TV stations, but we will continue to be heard for the last story, which is the sports story that I'm going to read in a second, at our YouTube station, which is AOC Community Media, or at our online streaming radio service, Cypress Street Radio, that's CYPRESS Street Radio, where you go to that page and click on the play button and continue to hear this morning news. So we will end this morning with a sports story entitled Going His Own Way. Star receiver Jamar Chase expected to opt out of season, prepare for NFL draft, another big blow for LSU's roster by Brooks Cubana. Jamar Chase, one of the most talented wide receivers in LSU history, expected to opt out his junior year and instead prepare for the NFL draft, sources confirmed Saturday to The Advocate. Chase joins defensive lineman Neil Farrell and safety Kerry Vincent as the third LSU football player choosing to sit out of the 2020 season. He is one of the most high-profile college players to make that decision so far. The news was first reported by CBS Sports. The Southeastern Conference, or SEC, announced in mid-July that players could sit out the 2020 season and still keep their scholarships. In early August, Chase's father, Jimmy, said his son was locked in on playing and wasn't focusing on possibly skipping the season during the coronavirus pandemic. That perspective has clearly changed, and the Tigers will have to press on without the player who may be the best on their roster. Chase was a proven playmaker. He was going to wear the team's coveted number 7 jersey this season. Last week, he was named a preseason Associated Press All-American, and he is expected to be one of the top receivers in this draft class. The Blintokoff Award winner in 2019, Chase set LSU and Southeastern Conference records with 1,780 yards receiving and 20 touchdowns and 84 catches, an average of 21.2 yards per reception. Chase's departure is the most recent blow in a difficult preseason camp for the Tigers. Since practice began August 17th, 2 stars have opted out, needed to monitor Hurricanes Marco and Laura. And on Wednesday, all but 4 LSU offensive linemen were quarantined after they either tested positive for COVID-19 or were determined to have high-risk exposure. Meanwhile, while many conferences have postponed fall sports, 6 football bowl subdivision leagues are moving forward with football this fall, including the SEC, which will play a 10-game league-only schedule. LSU is scheduled to open the 10-game season September 26 at home against Mississippi State.
Pretty Monday morning on the
now, projected starting quarterback Miles Brennan has lost his most dangerous target. Terrence Marshall,
very Monday morning, so I'm a little behind on whatever we're supposed to talk about today. So you guys can have to carry the ball a little
Marshall
bit.
caught 46 passes for
And we got enough of it. It's 10 o'clock. Let's kick this puppy off. And I'll start by saying, Bethany, if you wouldn't mind, give me a status report on how our payroll is doing against the amount
Tigers
we borrowed.
switched to a spread attack last season.
So I can see how we're doing on that. If we spent all that better money yet or not.
Senior Racing McNabb
And
as a
then
group's third option.
something
It's
else you were
likely
supposed
that
to
the
do. By the way,
6'3",
you okay? You got back in your house, you got
Orleans
power and
native
everything?
We'll step into a bigger role.
Yeah,
McNabb
I
caught
did.
17 passes
Yeah.
for 200
Okay, so
yards and 3
All
touchdowns
right, well, I
last
didn't want to
season.
ask you to get
which
into
included
a bunch
60-yard
of
reception.
stuff. This is bad
Orgeron has
disabled,
praised his
but,
speed and ability to make plays.
something else.
LSU's third
Another
receiver
format
will
emails
likely
on
be
Friday.
more
We got to fill
proven.
out today too. I
No
think
other
I'm supposed to
returning
sign a
receiver
copy,
caught
but
more
it's,
than 5 passes.
I don't even remember what it
Senior
is. But if you
Jontre
look at
Kirkland
that,
and
I'd
sophomore
appreciate it.
Jeray Jenkins combined for 7
And
catches
then,
for
Booz, if you're on the
142
line,
yards.
if you could send
However,
me
there is
whatever
a
you've
talented
got
youth.
so far for the
Sophomore Trey Palmer
Cajun
showcases speed with
COVID
a
cooking thing. I'm
54-yard
going to
punt
send my
return for a
mock-up out this
touchdown
afternoon. So
against
we can,
Northwestern State in
maybe
2019.
get a promotion
And
thing going
LSU
around
signed
that.
5-star wide receiver Keyshawn
And
Booth.
off the top of my head, I
Boutte
think that's
out of
everything I
Westgate
got.
High.
So, anybody
Boutte was
want
one
to
of
talk?
3 receivers in
I got
LSU's
something
2020
if
recruiting class,
nobody minds me going
including
first.
4-star
You're
Burma
on.
High grad.
So
Boy
Matt
Moore
will be in
and
touch with
3-star
you,
Mississippi
boss.
prospect
But I wanted to
Alex
let you know that he
Adams.
checked in with me this morning
And it
and
is
is
just
not
past 10
doing
o'clock. It's 10:01 here
100%.
by
So that's
my
why he's not
clock,
on this
which
call
means
right
that
now.
the news is
Okay.
over for this
But
morning.
you will be getting
If you
info
were
from
listening, we
him
appreciate
probably
it very,
like
very much.
he's either
as this
sending it
is
right
a
now or in the next
service
couple of minutes.
provided for free
Okay.
from
Without going
AOC
into
to you,
too much detail, I just
to
wanted
our
to like
Acadiana
let y'all know
neighbors
that
who
you
are
know
visually impaired,
he
or for
is having a
those who
little bit
don't
of a
get the
hard time, but
newspaper
we'll
or
be in
have
touch.
access to the news cycle.
All right. You don't
We
have any idea
appreciate
what
you
we can do to
listening
lighten this
in.
load, huh?
When we read the news
It's
to
really
you every
more of
morning,
a personal thing than a
courtesy
work
of the
thing.
Acadiana
Uh,
Advocate,
And I've been
Monday through Friday
covering,
from 9 to 10, from 9 a.m.
I've
to
been
10
covering
a.m.
Dennis
and
Vetrilla,
all of our TV stations
and
till
so far,
9:55. And after that,
Patricio,
at
that kind
our
of stuff for him
YouTube
while he
station,
was out.
AOC
Not
Community
last week.
Media,
Last week he
and
kind of
our
was getting back into
online
the groove.
streaming radio service,
But
Cypress
the 2 weeks he was out,
And
I
again,
was
we appreciate
covering
you
those
tuning
people.
in.
So hopefully
As
that's
always, this is
helping
Bruce Cohen.
lighten
Will always
his
be Bruce
workload a little
Cohen.
bit. But it really is.
And
It's
I
like more
wish you to be
a personal
healthy,
thing than a work
safe,
thing. It's
and
not. I don't
smart.
think work is the
Continue
issue
wearing
right now.
those masks.
Okay.
Continue
Well, we got to worry about our
washing your
partner
hands
anyway.
daily.
Okay. Well,
Staying
appreciate the heads up,
unaffected.
and I'll see what he tells
Don't be
me.
in large crowds.
Anything
where
else in
the
programming we
possibility
need to
of
share?
passing the virus on that you may
No,
have
we've got the
with
rescheduled budget
asymptomatic
meetings
symptoms
or
to
this
someone
week,
else
and
or
I'll
someone
send you
passes on
those.
to you. Let's try to
Mandy,
stop the
those
spread
new dates.
because we all
Bill
need
is
to be
aware.
in this together.
Uh,
And hopefully we're getting to that point. But it's
Oh, yeah.
still going to be a long haul, folks. So hang in there. Stick in there. And I
and we
know
don't
with
know
this
if
hurricane,
that Friday night
it's been
or
hard
that
on
Friday
everybody. I
day
wish
town
everybody
hall
out
thing is
there
going to be
the
rescheduled. We
best
probably
way to
don't.
recover you.
Yeah, I doubt if they're going to reschedule
We're
it.
there
They,
for you. We're
I
praying
haven't
for
heard
you. Our
anything,
blessings
so
are
I
on the
don't think he
way.
wants to be in
Just
front
stay
of the public.
positive.
He's messing
Try to
up
stay
real
positive
big
as you
time,
can.
and I
I
think
know
he's
it's
probably
hard,
going to go to the
but
bunker
we're
before
all
he
in
gets
this
out in
together.
public again.
So have a
Well,
great
and
day.
that's
Be
kind of
kind to each other.
my thought on it too. I know that like I had to call Kathy to make sure I could still get into city council, but city